It's been 4 weeks since the spill that has sent more than 240 million gallons of raw sewage and wastewater into the Potomac River tonight. For the first time, D.C. Water's top officials took questions from reporters. News 4's Mark Seagraves has covered this disaster more closely than any other reporter from day one and joins us live. Mark, there was some controversy over remarks made today by the district's director of the Department of Environment. What happened?
Yeah, Erica. So before the press conference with D.C. Water officials briefed members of the D.C. Council. Press were allowed to attend that briefing. Also at that briefing was Richard Jackson, the director of the D.C. Department of Environment and Energy. And during that briefing, he contradicted the Bowser administration's and Maryland and Virginia's warning to stay away from the river and not to eat fish out of the river. After the meeting, I tried to ask him to explain himself, and he refused to talk to us. Take a look. It was the first time members of the D.C. Council had a formal briefing from D.C. Water officials. Also at the meeting, Richard Jackson, director of the D.C. Department of Environment. Jackson told the council members, despite the D.C. government advisory to avoid contact with the river and specifically not to fish in the river, that he believes it's safe to eat the fish caught in the Potomac. He also downplayed the seriousness of the recent test results showing elevated E. coli rates in the river. The meeting was not recorded, but after the briefing, we tried to ask Jackson to explain his comments.
Director Jackson, can you tell us why you directly contradicted the guidance your agency has given out about fishing and the river quality?
Mike,
how can you give that briefing to the D.C. Council and directly contradict what your agency has said?
During the council briefing and at the press conference, D.C. Water CEO David Gaddis said he has not heard from the White House or from FEMA before or after President Trump's social media post yesterday stating he would have FEMA take over the repair and cleanup. Gaddis said the EPA has been monitoring the situation.
They were not helping. I won't say they weren't helping. They were not there when we were making the repairs. They did reach out last week. But we have been in contact with EPA, especially Region 3, and we have been talking with them especially about how we were making the repairs. We've given them briefings on what we were doing and how we were doing it. We've worked hand in hand with them. But as to the tweet, as far as I'm seeing it right now, we have not at this point in time sat down with EPA and said we need this much money or we need this or we need that.
And while there is no estimate for how much the sewage spill repair and cleanup will cost, D.C. Water officials say most of that cost will be paid for by Maryland and Virginia.
So we're a regional wastewater authority. We allocate costs based on the volume that's treated, and so there are cost shares for all of our assets. So at Blue Plains, approximately 55% of the flow comes from outside of the District of Columbia, and so the 55% of the costs are then borne by the users of the system who send flow to DC. And we expect a similar cost split for this asset.
Maryland and Virginia.
That's correct.
Because that's where the flow comes from.
David Gaddis told council members it will take a lot of work to restore the public's confidence in D.C. Water. And until the pipeline is repaired, there is always the possibility of more overflows going into the Potomac like we saw Super Bowl Sunday. So you're taking a look at the workaround here. That is raw sewage and wastewater being pumped into the C&O Canal at the rate of about 40 million gallons a day. This is the workaround that we've told you that D.C. Water has put into place to keep it from going into the Potomac River. They say that pipeline will still be another 4 to 6 weeks before it's repaired and they can begin working on a remediation plan. They did give a brief preview of the remediation plan, and it does call for remediating this area of the C&O Canal and the shoreline here right at the spill site. But right now there are no plans for remediation downriver along the shoreline a mile or two below or into Washington, D.C. As for Director Jackson and his remarks, he issued a statement after his remarks to us, saying that DC residents and everyone should still abide by the warning to stay away from the river, don't fish in the river, don't go near the river, but they are encouraged that test results are trending downward and they hope that trend continues. But until they have a few more weeks of testing, they want to play it safe and they don't want anyone going near the river or eating the fish out of the Potomac River. And as I've said before to you guys, not only can you smell this when you're out here, but it is just so pungent, you can taste it when you're talking. Back to you in the studio.
It's just putrid.
Yeah, we're not going to ask any more questions, Mark.
Mark Seagraves live for us this evening. Mark, thank you.